again, Katerina.
Hello.
Heading off to the US first, where financial regulators are getting tough.
Yes, they are. This is financial regulators and the US government, in fact. They announced on Tuesday that they're going to sue one of the country's biggest lenders. This is Bank of America. They allege that the bank carried out fraud back in 2008. Kate Moody has the details.
In two separate lawsuits, U.S. authorities have accused Bank of America of committing fraud in 2008 by misleading the public about mortgage-backed securities that contained bad investments. Worth about $850 million when it was issued in January 2008, the security collapsed during the housing crisis later that year and led to investor losses of about $100 million. Bank of America insists its investors understood the risks involved.
These were prime mortgages sold to sophisticated investors who had ample access to the underlying data. We are not responsible for the housing market collapse that caused mortgage loans to default at unprecedented rates and these securities to lose value as a result.
The lawsuits represent the Obama administration's latest attempt to crack down on errant business practices. And companies like the government-backed Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, whose lending policies were viewed as instrumental to the collapse of the housing market.
For too long, these companies were allowed to make huge profits buying mortgages, knowing that if their bets went bad, taxpayers would be left holding the bag.
Just last week, a former French trader for Goldman Sachs, Fabrice Tour, was found liable on similar charges of misleading investors in a scheme that cost over $1 billion.
Here in France, the latest import and export figures have been announced.
Yes, they have, and they show that for the first time in 2 years, the gap between imports and exports, this is the trade deficit, has narrowed to its smallest level of 30 billion euros. Now, key export sectors, as always, things like aeronautics, the French farmed goods, and these figures are being touted as further proof that the French economy is slowly but surely, steadily improving.
To India now, where there's a new central bank governor. He's got a tough job ahead.
Yes, he does indeed. Now, this is on Tuesday, the announcement that Raghuram Ranjan would take over as governor of the Bank of India. So let's take a look at his career so far, how he got to this post. He's a career economist, essentially, 50 years old, educated in India and at MIT in the United States. And he's worked at the International Monetary Fund. He was a chief economist there before returning to India to work as an advisor in the finance ministry. Now, it's going to be a tough time, as you say, in India, where the growth there is at its slowest pace in a decade, and Rajan doesn't underestimate the challenges ahead.
These are challenging times for the Indian economy, though no one can have any doubt about the country's promise. The government and the Reserve Bank are working together to address these challenges.
Okay, well, another governor who will be in the spotlight later is the Chief of the Bank of England, Mark Carney. He's announcing inflation results for the UK at about 11:30 Paris time. He'll also issue a forward guidance. Now, this is viewed by many as a crucial roadmap to show what the bank will do with regards to monetary policy and also when, which is a key question for investors. It's certainly something that will be impacting on the European markets also later today. Let's have a little look at how the European markets opened in the interim. It's been a fairly muted start for them, as you can see. The FTSE down nearly 0.6%. Expect them not to change too much before that announcement at 11:30 Paris time. The Asian markets, it's been a day of strong losses for the Nikkei in Japan, down 4%. Investors, they're also fairly cautious. In Japan, we've got another central bank announcement expected on Thursday, so some big but perhaps understandable losses there. Okay, let's take a look at some news in brief now. And Chinese regulators have fined 6 foreign companies for price fixing in the country's milk formula market. The penalties amount to $100 million in total. New Zealand dairy firm Fonterra is among those penalised. The firm's already under the spotlight in China after a food poisoning scare.
French bank Natixia has beaten expectations for its second quarter result. Profits at the bank came in at 267 million euros. Not so good news for the Franco-Belgian Dexia bank. It's just posted a loss of 905 million euros for the past 6 months.
And broadcaster 21st Century Fox is betting on sports. The firm is ploughing $200 million into sports channels and networks in the US and Asia. This is the broadcaster's biggest investment following its spin-off from News Corp, owned by Australian media mogul Rupert Murdoch.
Now, when there's talk of weddings, there's often talk of just how expensive it can be to organise one, but it's also pretty expensive for the guests.
It absolutely is. Now, I think this will strike a chord with anyone that's had sort of a summer of weddings perhaps so far. Now, this is official figures from a US consumer group, and they've looked at the impact that rising costs of attending weddings has actually had on your number of guests. Now, people that they spoke to, they said 43% of those that they surveyed had actually turned down a wedding invite due to financial restrictions. This is because on average to attend a wedding they put a figure of about €400. Now this includes travel, potentially hotel costs, and in fact 36% of people had actually gone into debt trying to attend a friend's wedding. Maybe it was one they felt they couldn't miss, perhaps it was abroad, for example, but it just shows that however expensive it is to attend your friend's wedding, people are still feeling quite generous. They've given an average of about €81 per gift per guest. So just shows it might be expensive to come, but when we get there we're happy to be there and see you on your big day.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Katerina. That's it for the business news, and now it's time to take a look at the international papers.